Hello and welcome to the after party. My first officer is the Great Order, and I am no white guilt. And the first thing I'm going to do is read super chats that have come in even before the show was scheduled to begin. Amanda Scott super chatting with 10 pounds. I'll be watching this on replay as I am in the UK and it's too late. But looking forward to seeing the show tomorrow. I'm sure it will be great as always. That's a great bet, Amanda. You can place it in Las Vegas. Luke digging down into the description even before the show was supposed to start at its scheduled time and super chatting $30. Thank you very much, good sir. Wonderful and thought-provoking incantation. Proud to stand with you both and the community for white well-being. Enjoy the stream. All the best to Blonde Buttermaker. And finally, we have Pamela super chatting $20, writing, hello, everyone. Red Ice member here, calling all Red Ice members to donate tonight. Thank you all very much for those kind super chats. And now appearing on the honors roll call today is Jason, Swole, Evelyn, Emily, and the good girl. I thank you all for your conscientious commitment to white well-being. The Super Chat crown winner from this past Monday goes to a man whose generosity is only eclipsed by his devotion to our people. Mr. Roy Danton, investing a total of $114.98. Felicitations and a great many thank yous, good sir. In second place, there was a tie. Yuri and JK160, both investing $20. I thank you both as well. As you all know, super chat on YouTube or follow the spiral staircase down into the video's description for a familiar alternative. In order to support those serving white well-being, Jared and I evenly share the super chats with our guests. And we have an announcement that was alluded to with Luke's super chat, and that is a couple of days ago, Jared premiered our spring incantation video on his channel, a project in which I was lucky enough to participate, written by Jared. He and I recite the lines of that incantation out in nature. If you have not seen this video, please visit his channel, which is the Great Order, when we tap out at the end of tonight's show. Today, we are going to get tapped into Elora, alias the Blonde Buttermaker, from the YouTube channel of the same name. The lovely Elora is a wife, homemaker, and mother of 3 adorable children. She volunteers health and wellness videos for Red Ice TV. Her videos include topics such as nutrition tips, recipes, and spirituality. It is her hope that her videos will inspire viewers to use their critical thinking skills and make choices for themselves when it comes to their health. In doing so, viewers will peel away layers of misinformation and lies that keep us from reaching true vitality, fertility, and freedom. With all that in consideration, I have 2 things to say. The first is that Mr. Blonde Buttermaker is a very lucky man. And the second is, it is our great pleasure to have Elora with us today. Jared, please take us into the conversation.
Yes, that was quite an introduction. And I like what you laid out about yourself, Elora. All of the things that matter to you matter a lot to me as well. And I'm confident I can speak for Jason. So I'm sure most of the people in our audience are familiar with what you do, but why don't we just start generally by you explaining a little bit about what you do and how you got into what you're doing online.
Okay. Well, it was a beautiful spring day today, and we all spent a lot of time outside in the sun, and I think I almost got a sunburn today. I know we all were just soaking in the glow of the sun, and so it was just a really great day to have before this. So thank you guys so much for having me on. Yeah, so I volunteer videos for Red Ice. They had a call for people to be putting in some content, and I had been dreaming of making videos for a long time about my passion about being awakened to the foods that we eat, actually nourishing our bodies and changing the way we act, and mainly my concerns have been about fertility. So it's a great time to be talking about how nutrition can help fertility in the spring. And so I started doing videos for Red Ice, and it's been a pleasure to be doing that. And it's just a dream come true, really.
Yeah, we love this theme of spring, and it's something that we're going to be talking a lot about tonight because a lot seems to be going on right now, and a lot of people seem to be feeling something special about this spring. That topic, that theme, keeps coming up. But about food in particular, Jason and I are again we're very into a healthy lifestyle and nutrition, so we're going to take this. What's great is you really are about holistic well-being, mind, body, and spirit, and that's why I said that your work really dovetails with a lot of what we're passionate about as well. There's going to be a lot to talk about. A lot of people in our audience are passionate about that. Mother Hen is in our audience. She was on with her husband Rory a few weeks ago. They're homesteading. They're parents of 5, and we had a great conversation with them on some of these similar themes. So this just seems to be a lot of what is on people's minds right now this spring. So why don't we get a little more into this? A general question about why people should care about what they eat, because a lot we know in the modern world, people just kind of grab and go and eat things that are made in fast food or convenient ways. How would you explain to someone who's in that modern mindset about how much more there is to food and nutrition and what you put in your body?
Um, the screen just went off. Can you repeat the question? I just came back in. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sure.
I don't know how that happened.
No worries. We were talking to the chat before, and people know that we were a little delayed because there's too much power here between the three of us. It's too much for the computers and the internet. So we're going to see if it can handle this electricity. But essentially, how you would answer someone that says they don't really get it, why food is so important. They think of it just more functionally, but they don't really think of it as something that's nourishing their body. They're not maybe conscious to everything that food is and nutrition is.
Yeah, I was the same way. When I was in college, I was a vegetarian. I thought, I listened to what they told me on the TV, on commercials, on the news, that you need to eat a low-fat diet and meat is bad for you. And I think a lot of people just they just think, I don't want to go to McDonald's because it will make me fat. And that's what I was concerned with. I thought all nutrition had to do with was you're either going to be fat because you're eating too much fat, or if you eat, a vegetarian diet, for example, for me, I thought, well, that will make you skinny. And that's all I cared about, was fat or not. And really, I think, and well, in a side note, is when I was a vegetarian, I was the heaviest I've ever been. And so that's just an interesting side note. And so anyways, I guess it does for me come down to remembering our roots. And I guess that gets a little too like, what is she talking about? But just remembering that our ancestors ate to nourish themselves. And I never thought of food as nourishment. If I was hungry, I'd eat some pretzels or something and to stop the hunger. But now I realize the chemistry and the biology and the ecology and how this all interplays with each other, and how actually food is actually the fuel for everything that you do, and all of your output that you can do, and your ability to live a vibrant and healthy and joyful life. And I'm so glad I've discovered that, and I'm so glad to be able to be sharing details and examples of that for people that might be very skeptical and not really be believing the things that when I say, don't drink that Jello shot, it has food dye in it. You don't want to be like doing that. I don't know, stuff like, or I'm a Debbie Downer at parties.
I know exactly what you mean, and I'm glad that you said that about the fat, because that seems to be, again, a remnant of the modern world, and especially American culture, where people are like, is it fat or is it not? Oh, this doesn't have a lot of calories.
Yeah,
But
calories.
it's this Weight Watchers dessert, and it only has 110 calories.
Right, but it has no nutrition.
Not only does it have no nutrition, it has preservatives and chemicals and all these fillers. If you just thought about that, this applies to so many things, and I want to keep it focused, but just bear that in mind, and maybe we'll get to some of that. I think that this analogy applies to a lot more than just food, but it really depends on where your frame is. Like if you're aiming higher than that, where it's just about, oh, fat, not fat, calories, not calories. If you're aiming for something way more ideal about what is, like you're saying, giving your body life and nutrition that fuels it, and it's giving all of the organs in your body the enzymes and the fuel that they need to function optimally. If you're thinking that way, you're automatically going to be within your ideal weight range. If you're eating clean, you're not eating preservatives, and you're also active. If you're thinking about these higher ideals and you're holding yourself to that, then those kind of lower goals, they kind of work themselves out. And again, this applies to a lot of things. It could apply to financial wealth as well. If it's just about that lower grade, like, oh, there are some people, I'm sure you've known them, where their whole fight in life is just about like this weight loss, like this 20 pounds they keep putting on and keep putting off, and they're keeping their focus on this level. And if they look up here on a higher level, that weight loss level would kind of take care of itself. So I totally get what you're saying. And I think that it's a catastrophe where there's so much preservatives and crap and chemicals in our food, which we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty. But you touched on something we'll get to early now, which is specifically for us peoples of European descent. If you could get a little more into why we need to be connecting to the food that's best for us and healthy for us, especially in this time when everything is attacking our whole way of life and our health on every level. And Jason, I think...
Okay,
you went away and now you're back.
Screen just blacked out again.
This is a wild night. I'm telling you, it's too much energy here.
The electricity is strong. The force
I
is
did
strong.
hear your question.
The ancestral link. I mean, we could talk specifically about why there's certain diets, but even before that,
yes,
it's just how does this connect to our peoplehood of being of European descent as well, and all the attacks that are going against us, mind, body, and spirit today? How does diet play into that?
Okay, this is a good question because it's definitely, I guess you could say, how I got red pilled, I guess, is I realized that we were being fed all of these lies about what is a healthy diet and what we should be eating, and even pharmaceuticals. Like, do I go straight to the doctor and get antibiotics? Do I try to do these things myself? And this all started when I had my first baby, and I wanted her to be healthy, and I started researching. It actually started with researching about teeth, because I realized that your dental health, it's a kind of a mirror of your overall health, and it was really important to me. And I found the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I haven't read Dr. Price's full book, but I've been reading a lot about ancestral diets and how the modern food pyramid is just a complete fallacy. And then I kind of got like, wow, like we are being fed all of these lies. And I wanted to know why. Why are we being medicated? Why are we being fed these horrible foods that are not nutritious? They're making us they're making us infertile. They're making us have eczema, they're making our hair fall out, they're making all these things that the doctors say it's just your genes, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. Why don't we give you this medication? I wanted to know why. And so I guess it is one of those death by a thousand cuts where we're being attacked on all levels. And it's like, you know, one little thing after another can accumulate, you know, to poor, awful health. And I wanted to know why. And that's what started me on this road.
Yeah, I actually read some of Nourishing Traditions written by, I have it up here, Sally Fallon. And I think she was influenced by Weston Price. We're going to get into that too, because I like your approach from what I've seen with your cooking videos and your output on Red Ice and your own channel. Because some people go like purely into the, well, plants are nutritious, herbs and plants have all of these micronutrients that we need. And especially with our eroded soil right now, even if you eat organic, you still need to get extra stuff that maybe 75 years ago, our grandparents and great grandparents, they didn't need as much because the soil was a lot richer in minerals. So yeah, there's wonderful things in plants, and some people go the other way and they just look at the meat or the macronutrients. And I like that you combine, you know, you're like soaking nuts and soaking oats and dehydrating stuff, and even doing some stuff that you might find in like the more raw foods type diet stuff. But also you're doing liver patés, and there's meats and butter, grass-fed milk butter. And that is really the approach that I've used myself. I don't cook the way that you do, you know, but the general approach that you use is kind of what I have found for myself, is combining both of these things, where it's good animal products, it's good meat, it's good grass-fed dairy a little bit, but also all those nutrients from plants and herbs as well. There's no reason that you can't do both. Some of the more plant-based stuff is cleansing at times, and that's okay for a little bit. Like I've gone through periods of fasting or only like doing like juices or something, but that's not supposed to be a whole lifestyle. You see these vegans that look emaciated and that's their whole lifestyle. You need to have things that cleanse and build and kind of go back and forth between cycles. So I like most of where you're coming from, because it's what I've arrived at myself. I see a lot of similarities. But why don't we talk a little bit specifically, since we're kind of dancing around this subject, about diets that are best for European people. So get into our ancestral diet. Do you think that we shouldn't eat bananas or mangoes because our ancestors didn't? You know, I still eat things like that, but I am open to that idea that if we were built on certain plants and fruits and meats and not others for thousands and thousands of years, that maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit and say, I definitely agree. It's a balance that's really important. And what I wish I could tell people is it's not a specific fancy diet. It's not like exactly what you eat, but it's how it was raised. Because I can absolutely agree with vegans when they say, you know, industrial meat, factory farm cows and pigs and chickens, those are awful things to be eating. And I completely agree with that. But
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean we don't eat meat. Like, if that's not how it works. Like, you know, so yeah, I was giggling to myself when you said, like, should we not eat mangoes because our ancestors didn't eat mangoes? And I wouldn't go that far, really, because I like things like coconut oil and coffee, and probably some teas that I drink are maybe herbs that can't be grown in Europe. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't go that far. But I definitely do think that there's some really great examples that I wanted to give you guys one example of an ancestral indigenous population in the Swiss Alps that Dr. Weston Price talks about. And so, what did they eat? Because he found that these people were in perfect health, and this was the 1930s, and they were completely cut off from the modernized areas of Switzerland. And he found that they were healthier than the modernized areas of Switzerland. And I think that we could learn a lot from what our ancestral peoples ate to keep them surviving through the winter, to keep them being able to birth babies, to work hard work without our modern day farming equipment and stuff like that. So I think if you'd like, I could kind of go into that example.
Yeah. For people that don't know, Weston Price was a dentist, and he noticed that as you were saying earlier, the dental structure was a lot better in a lot of indigenous or traditional societies all around the world. And I do remember years ago, it's funny to talk to you now because you're kind of reminding me of this period I went through several years ago where I upped my knowledge of nutrition and changed my diet a bit. And I was reading about him and the studies he did. And I remember going to the remote village in Switzerland. I remember all of this. And I know someone else talked about how in Switzerland structured water, the quality of the water, and actually the molecular structure of the water had a lot to do with it as well. But yeah, please go on. Tell us a little about this.
Before you do, Miss Blonde Buttermaker, if I could read some super chats. We have Sabat super chatting $2, writing glad to be on time, and also super chatting with $5, writing, I also apologize for my misplaced criticism from 2 streams ago. Jason, you have my respect and support. Well, you are forgiven and welcome back. Mother Hen super chatting by diving down into the description for the familiar alternative and investing $25. Her comment is directed to the Blonde Buttermaker. You are an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. It has helped me. What is your take on the benefits of eating like our ancestors? So we're essentially orbiting this subject right now. I will just like to give my own opinion very briefly about this idea. I don't want people, because I think this is an important part of being healthy. There isn't a magical food somewhere, or a magical water somewhere, or a magical soil somewhere. This is something that can easily confuse people when they decide, what they're going to be healthy. They decide that they're going to take their health into their own hands and eat right, work out, be fit, and they then begin this search. It's sort of the Ponce de Leon. They're searching for this fountain of youth somewhere, this magical this or that, and it's going to make everything better. No, everything you need to work perfectly is already to work as good as your genetics are going to be able to work, is already inside of you. So that gets off into another subject that we can address at some point. But the bottom line is that stop consuming all of the poisons that we are consuming in our daily diets. To be honest, if I had the money and I were unscrupulous, I would hire some people to bottle water in some just bizarre town in Yugoslavia, and then tell people that, this water does X, Y, and Z for you, because I know that Americans and Westerners across Europe would spend big money to be healthy by buying the water taken out of the well de la Chita, and it would make them pure as driven snow. That is simply not the case. The first thing you have to do is stop eating the poisons, and you have to eat, as we are talking about here tonight with the lovely Alora, you have to eat healthy things that come from healthy places. That's it. There's not magic, but it does take work and it does take some knowledge. So I will pass it back over to Alora so we can get into some of that discussion right now.
Yeah, I definitely, when I first started this journey, I definitely was searching for that magical supplement that was going to make me feel better, and that just turned into probably thousands of dollars of half half empty, half full supplement bottles in my cupboards, and until I just reeled it in, and I was really trying to focus on the basics in diet. And there isn't going to be a magical, take some probiotics with your antibiotic, take some St. John's wort with your antidepressant. Like, there's not going to be like, a specific magical herb or something that's going to help you. You have to get down to the root of it. And that's where we've been fed lies about what we were supposed to be eating from the beginning of our lives, basically, if you were formula fed. So yeah, I was very charmed by this anecdote of the Switzerland population. And so I wanted to share that with the listeners. So Dr. Price, he traveled to Switzerland, and he wanted to find primitive populations that were healthy. And then he could figure out, okay, is it their diet? What are they eating? Are they healthy? And why are they so healthy? And so first he came to the Swiss Alps, a valley beneath the Swiss Alps. And what he would do first is he would line all the villagers up. First, he would get a translator and ask the elders, could he do this? Can he study them? So you get permission first, and he would line up women, children, babies, the men, and he would check their teeth. And so he would systematically check inside each individual's mouth to see, do they have dental deformities? Do they have cavities? Do they have, in this population, which I think is funny, is they did not brush their teeth. They didn't know anything about that. So I'm sure it was a surprise when he found that only 3.4% of them had dental decay, and none of these villagers had crooked teeth. And the village was known for their strong men, their beautiful women. The children were very healthy. He noted that they played in the glacial streams barefoot and with their bare hands in the wintertime, where him and his wife had to button up their coats. They were cold just even standing out there. This primitive population, they were happy, they were sturdy, they had symmetrical, broad faces. The women, they birthed the babies easily. And another side note is there was no instances of tuberculosis, which was a major threat at this time. So he answered the question, yes, here he has a healthy population. And so then he studied what they ate. And what he found was the number one food they ate was raw milk and raw dairy products, raw cream, butter, and cheese. They had true sourdough rye bread. Rye was one of the things that they were able to grow there in the cold climate. And then they also ate meat from cattle, sheep, and goats. And this included the organ meats and the skin and the bones made into bone broth. And they really did not eat that many vegetables. They had a really short growing season, but they were able to have some vegetables in the summer months. And so what do you guys think about that diet, today? Just, we will go into the specifics of each of those items, but when you think about the buzzwords like keto and paleo and vegan, and those will all make you healthy. Well, here is a population eating dairy and, well, some grains, sourdough, fermented rye bread. So dairy, meat, and bread. If you're on the paleo diet, it says no dairy foods, right? And no grains. And if you're on the keto diet, it says just meat. If you're on the vegan diet, it says no meat. So what do you guys think about that? That's a pretty interesting story we're coming to here.
Jared.
Did they have any, I know you said they had a short growing season. Did they have any plant intake in the form of herbs or berries?
Hey, that's a really great question. And I did not come across an answer to that. But berries, that's a very good question. I'm sure they were able to have berries, but I guess officially, I'm not sure, that wasn't in the text.
Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like, if, as Jason was saying, it is a lot about the source, and as we're all aware of. So it sounds like their macronutrients are on point because of how pure it's sourced, and it's right there with the goats and the cattle that they're getting, and also fermented with the sourdough. That is very important as well. I think we're going to get more into this a little bit later, but gut biome health, the balance of the flora the microflora in your gut, if they're doing things. I wonder too, if it was in Germanic Switzerland, if they were doing sauerkraut and things like that. I love sauerkraut myself, and I saw the chat talking about sauerkraut before.
I need to do a sauerkraut video, don't I?
Yeah. My dad and I joke that we could eat sauerkraut with pretty much everything except breakfast cereal. But then again, I don't eat breakfast cereal. So yeah, maybe not if you had Italian food with like tomato sauce, maybe it'd be weird. But yeah, it sounds like their macronutrients are on point. As I was saying, because of the way we eat now and maybe the pollution living in the modern world, I do look for things like I'll take a green powder, let's say. And I totally 100% agree with you and what Jason said before, that people can go nuts with this whole chasing the golden unicorn with superfoods, and it's a whole industry and it keeps people on this hamster wheel. Absolutely, you have to be very, very discerning and careful. But I do give my body a boost of extra nutrients, phytonutrients, micronutrients.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of all the harm that's done.
Yes.
So maybe back then they didn't need it. They're in a different environment. But it's interesting to hear of this diet without those, if they're not getting a lot of plants or herbs. And I know you said you weren't sure about the herbs, the micronutrients. But those are some of my first impressions. Jason, I know you may have some of your own.
Well, yeah, I gave up on all dairy products and all wheat products years ago, and I have never looked back. I mean, my health improved so much. The clarity of my thought improved so much, which is of course not to say that the dairy products or the wheat products that these people were eating in the Swiss Alps, it would have undermined me in the same way that the kind of things that I'm eating here, dairy-wise and wheat-wise, were undermining me. But without question, I mean, the bottom line is that we live in, I said this back in junior high school to my peers and my teachers, that when you live in an environment that the highest good when it comes to conducting business is making more money. And as the morality of that society, which was Christianity, slowly dips into oblivion, and our normal, perhaps, I guess, what you could call it, Christian under the Christian dogma, or Christian under the normal, whatever norms that have been passed down from Europe. Whatever the case, as those dip down into and recede before this new manna in business, that priority then sacrifices the individual for more of the money. So each businessman and woman says, how are we going to make a little bit more money out of this product? Well, they go to the R&D department, and the R&D department comes back and says, well, if we put just a little bit of poison in there, just a little bit of poison, it's not really going to harm anybody. They'll just flush it out. Their kidneys and livers will just take care of it. No big deal. Nobody will be harmed by it. But look at the bottom line here. Look at how much more money we make. And the reality, of course, is that the dynamism of a free market that is I guess supervised, I don't want to say regulated, by a people that has a morality that puts the people first. Unsupervised by such a morality, you then end up by necessity in a runaway situation where businessman or woman A has to put a little poison in to make a little bit more money, because businessman or woman B is going to be doing that. And if he or she doesn't, then he or she will be put out of business quite readily. So you end up with this sort of runaway where you have all of the businesses that are putting just a little bit of poison in, and you end up with a very poisoned and sick population. So part of, I guess, the big question that I guess we'll be talking about tonight is, and of course, Elora addresses, is where do you find these good sources of foods? Because you're not going to find them packaged in cellophane at the local grocery store. But those are just a couple of my thoughts on what you had to say, Alora.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, going back to how you said you've cut dairy and grains from your diet. I mean, absolutely. When we have a damaged gut or damaged intestines, our stomach, we develop intolerances to foods that these little bit of poison here and there. If I didn't have access to fresh raw milk from cows grazing on the fresh green grass right now in spring, which is a wonderful time to get a really nutritious milk, I would probably be making coconut milk or almond milk at home. I would not be drinking the milk in those big jugs from the store that are like $1 or, extremely cheap milk. I wouldn't be drinking that. And I myself, I don't think that wheat is bad, but I had a blood test and I have a gluten intolerance, because of my damaged gut. And also, which we'll get into later, the wheat we eat today is not what our ancestors ate. And it's definitely more of going back to our roots and eating the foods the way that our ancestors ate them. And so we can talk about that. What did the Swiss population, what was different about their milk versus the milk fast forward, almost 100 years? What's different between these two milks? Well, they were drinking raw milk, which means that milk is not pasteurized. It's not homogenized. And when you pasteurize milk and you mix it all up with all the, thousands and thousands of cows' milk all mixed up, you pretty much destroy this wonderful life-giving substance. It kind of becomes a shell of what it could be. All of the nutrients are taken away. And also, raw milk has lots of enzymes. And if you find yourself lactose intolerant, it's probably because the lactase in the milk is gone, which helps you digest the milk. I couldn't, before, when I was becoming a vegetarian, I self-diagnosed myself with lactose intolerance, and I was drinking soy milk, which is terrible. But there is a big difference. And also, I wanted to note that this milk was full fat. We're not going to be having 2% in skim milk to be healthy, because in the fat is where the nutrients are, fat-soluble vitamins that we can't get from plants. And also, cholesterol is a vital part of our cell membranes, and it's in the greatest concentration in our brains and our nervous system. And cholesterol is actually really, really important for our sex hormones and for a healthy sex libido and, stuff like that. And also cholesterol, it helps with our serotonin levels, the feel-good chemical. So we can see there's a big difference between when I say, oh, I drink milk, or this really healthy population sustain themselves on milk. We're not talking about the milk that you're buying at the store, for 99 cents or, whatever. And so then I wanted to talk about the sourdough bread that they ate. And that's when I have a little prop, because I like to bring out this prop and hopefully we'll be able to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to bring this prop out when I have friends over and they don't really get what I'm saying, because like I said, I'm really fun at parties. I bring out props and talk about food.
This is the after party. So this is your kind of party.
Oh, great.
Funny enough, by the way, I noticed that you call your episodes that don't have to do with cooking after hours. And we have or I should say a less formal show called After Hours, when we have someone it's not this format where it's like a one focused 2-hour conversation with someone. We just do extra things. One of those is After Hours. So you use After Hours too. I was like, nice coincidence there. So you're in the right party.
Yeah. Okay. So this population, a typical meal would be the sourdough bread and a piece of cheese, and that would be a typical lunch to get them through the day. And so, a lot of people don't know. Well, I eat bread and I eat sourdough bread that I bought at the store, and I can't tolerate it. And here's a little. We'll see if I can see this. So these are wheat berries, and this is how we before the Industrial Revolution, this is how we would get our flour. We would grind these berries, and that would be whole wheat flour. But then it became, factory made so that we could get it, as cities increased, we could get into the cities. And let's see. So they took the whole grain, and I gotta hold it right. They took away the bran and the wheat germ because, we like the taste changed. We like the white flour products. We took out the bran, but most importantly is they removed the wheat germ, because the wheat germ is, it's the inside, it's the living part of the wheat berry. And this can go rancid pretty quickly when you grind it up and it's exposed to air. And so it can go bad pretty quickly. And they needed bread and flour that could be stable on the shelves. And so the wheat germ oil was removed. And actually, this is where all of the nutrients are in the wheat berry. There's B vitamins, there's minerals in wheat berries. It can be healthy. But after all of that, in our stores today, we're just left with the white flour. And again, like the milk, it is only a shell of what it could be. When you're eating crackers and bagels and waffles and stuff like that, it's only a really sad shell of what it could be. It could be this nutritious meal. And even more importantly is they knew to ferment their dough, which is true sourdough, which further decreases phytonutrients, which are deleterious, nutrients in the wheat berry that, they help preserve the germ inside, and that can hurt your stomach. And also, when you're fermenting things, it increases the nutrients. So that's
it's similar to soaking oats and nuts,
yes.
which I know that you've had some videos about that. Just if you could hold that up again one more time, if you still have that. So just to make sure the audience gets this. So on screen left, it'll be opposite for you, Alora, but on the on screen left, that is the wheat berry as it's supposed to be, right? And then these next ones, all of that's taken out, and you're left with what's on the other end. That's showing how it's been degraded. All those things in the middle are nutrients that we're not getting.
Fiber is very important for our diet. And when we're eating, white flour products, we're not getting fiber. Fiber is really important for detoxifying in our guts to flush out, toxins and, in our lower intestine and stuff like that. And we have a kind of a low fiber diet when we're basing things just on white flour. And, if you're buying whole wheat from the store, they're just, it's this with the bran added back in. You're not getting the nutrition.
So that must be, it's funny. I wonder if he had this when we spoke to Millennial Woes the other day, and he said how he was in Sweden for the Skansa Forum, and he's like, he just had bread and cheese, and it was very filling, and he's like, this bread is amazing, and it was like this passing comment. But now I'm thinking maybe he had some kind of hearty bread like what you're talking about. It also has me thinking, and I do want to continue on this track of nutrition, and we will open it up into other considerations as well. But let me just tease one of those other considerations is this kind of diet doesn't seem possible in a mass-produced society, that we would have to go back to having more people growing their own food and exchanging things locally. And with a lot of talk right now about where things are going to go politically, where things are going to go community-wise, where people who work with their hands for a living, and we see factory jobs drying up, we see manufacturing jobs drying up. A lot of talk in our circles, and I think this is a great thing, are encouraging people to go back to the land and start. Maybe it'll be a little different than things were back in the day, but in some new way, people are producing their own food again and exchanging with neighbors. Because from what you're describing, if you have these huge nation states that we live in, especially the United States of America with hundreds of millions of people, and most of the population isn't farming anymore, it seems like to get this, it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying that this was all just like a happy accident, not a happy accident, that this was just all unintentional, because I do think there are some probably more nefarious intentions behind this and getting people sick, especially the pharmaceutical industry. But leaving all that aside, kind of bookshelving that, still just the mere fact of trying to get bread on the shelves to hundreds of millions of people, it does. I don't see the connection between what you're saying and what's on the shelf, which is not a bad thing. I think it's indicating the fact that people do need to get back to doing this themselves, and there will be tremendous benefits socially and spiritually as well, of knowing that this food you're eating was made by your parents or your grandmother or neighbors, and you're trading it. There's a lot to this. So I do want to make sure that we get to that, but I do have a question, if you will indulge me, and something I'm curious about, and I have not partaken in myself yet. That is organ meats. I hear a lot of talk
Jared,
about organ meats.
Jared, hold your organ meats for a moment.
Oh my!
I'm going to come in with some. You're talking about super chats, and I guess it was Woes with his amazing cheese, and so I wanted to hit these super chats because they're amazing as well. We've got JK160 super chatting $20, writing wife, and I love blonde buttermaker. Don't know what he wrote there first. Oh, maybe him and his wife love blonde buttermaker. That's what it is. Thanks for having her on. Well said. Thank you for that great super chat, JK160. Kieran Kelby super chatting with £2. Didn't write anything that I see here, but thank you very much for that super chat. Phoenix Fire super chatting $10 in by way of the familiar alternative. Thank you very much for that, Phoenix. And writing, this is one of my favorite subjects. Thanks to you for having Blonde Buttermaker on. You are most welcome. Of course, Phoenix Fire is a great member of our community. She's been working on and building and continues to work on the NoWhiteGuiltCollectibles.com store, and is responsible for the banner that you see on the wall there. By the way, we will have those banners for sale in the near future, and that graphic will be going on to some products as well. And then finally, an amazing super chat from our great friend Quebec, super chatting by way of that familiar alternative as well. Writing, just finished watching Owen Benjamin interview with E. Michael Jones. Very enlightening. Give my best to the blonde buttermaker. And he super chatted $250. Thank you so much for that munificent super chat, Quebec. And Jared, I will now pass it back over to you so that you can unhand your organ meat.
Oh my God, we're a mixed company, Jason. Please, we're gentlemen here. I swear. Yes, Quebec is a beast. Thank you, and thank you to everyone that's donated. And I should mention John too, as a contributor who's been very generous as well. But anyway, yes, organ meats. Why have they gone away, and what are we missing?
Okay, well, that is perfect that we're going to be talking about organ meats and meat in general, because that was the next thing on our mysterious list of what the Swiss were eating, was the meat from the animals that were grazing on the fresh green grass. They weren't eating grains and GMOs and all sorts of crazy things we hear about industrial meats. And so, yeah, organ meats. And I have a charming little cookbook from the 1800s. It's an American cookbook, reprinted, and And in this cookbook, you will see a lot of the recipes is liver and kidneys all mixed in with the meat and head cheese. And my daughters and I were watching this really cute video, documentary type video on YouTube called Victorian Farm Christmas. And they were showing all of the ways that they prepared foods in the 1800s. So it's kind of a recent thing that we're scared and grossed out by organ meats. I like to call liver nature's multivitamin. It is so full of fat soluble vitamins D, A, and also very high in minerals and iron. And I have a video about how to make your own liver pate, because I know people probably don't even know what liver looks like, or I hear stories all the time of older age people saying, my grandparents always tried to make me eat liver and it was so gross. And why did that go away is a good question for me to dig more into. And maybe, you've discovered some insight on that, but I do know what is so good about these foods. And another thing to mention is bone broth, which is I don't even like to bring attention to it, but it's really kind of funny. There's somebody made like a hate video about me, and they highlighted my video where I was making bone broth, and I held up a spoon with the solidified bone broth, and I was like, it's like Jell-O but with meat, and I jiggled it, and the beautiful nutrient rich gelatin bone broth was jiggling, and she was like, does that look healthy to you? And yes, that is really healthy, actually. Gelatin and its amino acid profile is, most of us know it's good for your hair, your skin, your nails, your bones, but it's also good for repairing damages to our gut. And it's actually, which I have just recently learned, it's really good for your heart health and our veins and arteries. It's really important that we have those building blocks for strong heart health. And it's good for your mood. It's glycine is one amino acid that's important for us. It's detoxifying and liver cleansing. So when we have a diet that's too much focused on muscle meats, and we're not eating the organ meats and the skin and the bones, making a wonderful, full, balanced meal, that's not really healthy either. There's some components in muscle meat that I'm just now learning about. I wanted to share with you guys. I'm not going to be exact about it because I've just learned about it, but there are components in muscle meat that can be deleterious to us if we're not also eating the synergistic components in the liver and the kidneys and in the bones, the connective tissues too. So
I'm familiar, yes.
The keto diet is like, great, eat your steak, but please have some bone broth every morning too, because if you're eating heavy muscle meats, we also need the meats that are, or the connective tissues in the other parts of the animals. So
yes, it's the same concept as when you showed the different components of the wheat a few minutes ago. I've seen what you're talking about, Elora. I don't remember the biochemistry offhand, but I've certainly seen the reports and the research on how just what you were saying, there's things in muscle meats that if you're not taking in the organ meat and the bone broth might not be so good, but they're offset when you take in everything together. And it goes back to one of our favorite words around here, holistic.
yeah.
And there's this fetishization, another thing we've talked about, of other cultures. Now every time I hear someone be like, the Native Americans were so spiritual. They thanked the animal after they killed it, and they used every part of it. I was like, so did Europeans, guys.
Yes.
So did Europeans. We have to stop this. It's ridiculous. And we need to call people out and educate them when we hear them Yeah, so did our ancestors. It's just it's ancestral ways, and we can't fetishize these other peoples and put the locus of being more connected or more wise or more spiritual in these other cultures. We need to reclaim our own particular brand of that. So I'm glad that you said that, because our ancestors used all of the meat, and there's a wisdom in that, using all parts of the animal, all parts of the grain. There's a wisdom in how nature has presented this to us.
A lost wisdom, yeah.
And I have a kind of a pet theory that a lot of, if you want to just break everything down to the root in the most basic way, one of the common denominator of the catastrophe of modernity is that it compartmentalizes things. And this metaphor of food, again, it could be used with other things, but pharmaceuticals, I mean, they don't come from outer space. There's in a weird way, they're still natural, but they're taken and they're synthesized and they're mixed with other things in such an artificial way that doesn't occur in nature. That's why there's all these crazy side effects. And when you watch the pharmaceutical commercial, the side effects listed is longer than what it actually does for you. We just extract these little things here and there, whereas in nature, you used a good word a moment ago, synergy. I like that. There's the synergy of all the aspects of the wheat, like you were showing with the vials before, or all the aspects of having the meat. And I'm not saying that I do this yet. I don't have organ meats and bone broth all the time, but it's something I'm interested in. And I think we all need to hear about this, learn about this, start doing this together. So it is really important that we're talking about this. Now, we have on our list here something about sacred foods, and I don't really know what that means. It's a little mysterious. So was there something you wanted to say about that?
Yes, absolutely. So my personal favorite part about our little story of the Swiss is butter, because I'm the blonde butter maker, and butter was their sacred food. And I wanted to read a little section just quickly of Dr. Price's book when he's talking about this, and it will hopefully set the stage for this idea of sacred foods. And he says, I learned much about the life and customs of these people. He told me that they recognized the presence of divinity in the life-giving qualities of the butter made in June when the cows have arrived for pasturage near the glaciers. He gathers the people together to thank the kind father. They probably were thanking others before they had to change over, but the kind father for the evidence of his being in the life-giving qualities of butter and cheese made when the cows eat the grass near the snow line. This worshipful program includes the lighting of a wick in a bowl of the first butter made after the cows have reached the luscious summer pasturage. This wick is permitted to burn in a special sanctuary built for this purpose. The natives of the valley are able to recognize the superior quality of their June butter, and without knowing exactly why, pay it due homage. And that was really moving for me to read, and so that can help set the stage for these sacred foods. So this butter was specifically the deep golden yellow butter. So when we are buying butter at the store, conventional butter, it's a pale, sad kind of looking butter. And when you make butter at home, or when you buy expensive butter that's from grass-fed cows, there's lots of tricks maybe we could talk about to lower the cost of eating healthy, but it's a deep yellow, just joyful color, which is a really great color to be thinking about during spring, and the golden daffodils are coming up and the sun's coming back. So that feels it's a really beautiful color. And so anyways, the butter made in spring was extremely rich in vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 is only found in animal fats. And vitamin K2 is essential for reproduction, and it puts minerals where they belong in our bodies. For example, calcium in our bones and teeth instead of our arteries and kidneys. And, we can get, heart disease from calcium, not cholesterol, clogging our arteries. And so we can kale is something that I don't like kale. I try to like kale. I know it's one of those superfoods. I don't like kale. But kale has been said it's very high in vitamin K, and vegans can get plenty of vitamin K from I think broccoli, other vegetables like that. But that's vitamin K1, which is it's more difficult for our bodies to process and to absorb and to utilize in the body compared to K2. K2 is very easily used, and when you have a impaired gut, it's really important that the things we eat are easily assimilated in our bodies. And also, vitamin K2 works in synergy with vitamin A and D. Vitamin K2 activates the proteins in our bodies that A and D signal cells to make. So, these Swiss, they didn't know all about vitamin K, but they listened, going back to your example of the Native Americans and how, they listened to nature and they did what nature told them. And you know what? So did our ancestors. These Swiss, they knew that butter was extremely important and essential for their survival. And Dr. Price found that every indigenous primitive population had this sacred food. And these foods were prized for women before conception, during pregnancy, and they were also given to babies and young growing children. And also there's some examples where they were saved for the warriors of their population. And I think that is really important to talk about, that these sacred foods, without knowing the science that we know now about these items, they were saved because our health comes before we were even born, and even before we were even conceived, the health of our parents. And they knew through these sacred foods that they were going to give to the young women who were going to be conceiving, that they were going to continue on their population in a joyful and vital and healthy way. So that's sacred foods.
That's nothing more beautiful than that. You're making me want to go to Switzerland even more. Some of the people in the chat might know I have a little thing with Switzerland. I haven't been. I've been close by. I've been in the Black Forest of Germany, which was an incredible experience, but I haven't been in the Swiss Alps, and I really want to go, and you're making me want to go even more. Before we get on to some of the topics, just quickly, you had said something before about the fats are important, even though a lot of people in mainstream culture are afraid of fats, right? Because it helps vitamins. You said something about fat soluble. It helps our vitamins absorb. Did I pick that up correctly?
Yeah, so we can't just say vitamin A and vitamin D, and there's vitamin A in carrots, but actually we have to be more specific than that. And it's kind of like the difference between beta carotene and vitamin A. It's not, kind of going back to, it's not the food we eat, but how it was raised. It's not the vitamins we eat, but what specific forms of these vitamins are
Bioavailable.
Bioavailable. Our bodies, maybe evolutionarily, we were meant to eat that form of the vitamin compared to other forms of the vitamin. So fat-soluble vitamins are much easier for us to digest, and they're very, very important for women of reproductive age. And I guess I just wanted to also mention, in the news lately, there's been this postpartum depression drug, and it just made me so sad, because it is a hard time after you've had a baby, where your body has used a lot of its nutrients to build the baby. It takes a lot of nutrients to birth the baby, and it takes a lot to breastfeed your baby. And it's very common for postpartum depression to occur in women. And it's especially because we have nutritionless diets when we're eating the standard American diet: sugar, white flour, sodas instead of raw milk, and we aren't nourished. And it just made me so sad to think of these women in our culture. We're not eating these sacred foods to make sure that we are, birthing our babies easily, and we're nursing them easily, and we're getting the joyful and happy times because we're well nourished in in the foods we eat, because vitamins A, D, and K, and cholesterol that are all found in animal fats contribute to happiness. And for example, vitamin D activates genes that release serotonin and regulates enzymes that convert tryptophan into serotonin. So I say there should be more education about eating a very high-fat diet before, during, and after pregnancy for women, and also for men who want to conceive. They should also be eating a very healthy diet, because it does affect sperm and sperm quality and stuff like that. So the fat, and again, it's not like, it depends on what kind of fat you're eating. It needs to be these high nutritious, clean, from pasture raised animals.
This is amazing material. We're going to have you back probably 100 more times. I know Jared and I want to do health and wellness streams as well. We have planned on doing them, and we will do them. And we would love to have you appear on those streams, or some of those streams as well, because you have such great information. I think that if I were eating half this good, I'm about a third of the way there, maybe less than a third of the way there. If I were eating half this good, I would be a Superman. I mean, this is truly amazing. What is it like to be Mr. Blonde Buttermaker? I have some super chats that I'm going to read for all of us. Let's see. Sabat with super chatting $5. Thank you very much for that kind super chat. To pull inspiration from futurists, what about urban farming, growing personal food products on all high-rise buildings and in backyards? Well, I'm sure we'll touch upon some of that as we move through this discussion. Thank you very much for the question and the super chat. Super chatting by way of the familiar alternative, we have Key super chatting with $10 and writing, just a token, hoping you guys can keep the heart, energy, fortitude, and fight to keep creating content for the aware white folks in our biosphere. What the hell is Jared doing looking so damn dapper? Never known a ginger to be quite so stylish.
Well, obviously you haven't watched the show before.
Yes.
It's my MO.
It's his MO. We also have Eleanor by Design, super chatting with $5. Hello, Blonde Buttermaker. What's your 1800s cookbook called? We'll answer that question, and then we'll move on to, and I tell you this, I might have to find a way. I haven't had butter in years because of how far I ran from dairy products when I ran. So we might have to find a way for me to, have you ship me perhaps some of your homemade butter that I can try and maybe become the Superman that I would love to be. But
we should start with ghee.
Yes.
Start with ghee, right? Yes, I've heard of
Clarify.
that.
GHEE, which is it has the casein, which can irritate people that can't tolerate dairy, is taken out of it. So if you can't have dairy, you should be able to have ghee, which is kind of like a clarified form of butter, and you can buy that at the stores. It's expensive, but there's ways to get good deals, and you will make sure it's from grass-fed cows, or you can make it yourself too.
Well, see, this is why I need. Jared? I mean, could you imagine how healthy we would be if we both had women like Laura? I mean, it would be absolutely amazing.
You're embarrassing us. Yeah,
glow like the dawn.
I mean, I eat pretty well, but yeah, it's
okay. So first,
it's not the same thing as having a wife at home to do stuff like this. I would be curious for Jason and I to give you what we've eaten today and kind of analyze it. But
I would be perfect every day. I do not want people thinking I'm perfect, because I do have 3 young children. We don't always eat perfect, but there are some main things that we do avoid, and we'll get into that later too. So
Great.
just so everyone knows, I have eaten things like ice cream in the past 2 weeks, and so it's.
But was it
the
organic grass fed?
No, it wasn't,
Oh,
and
okay.
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I said
to-
just this once, it's okay.
This is going to be on the whites only Inquirer. Is the scandalous photo of blonde buttermaker shoveling dairy?
She was seen at Dunkin' Donuts last Tuesday. No, don't get Dunkin' Donuts. That's poison.
We have to find out the 1800s cookbook.
Okay, it's called the Baptist Ladies Cookbook.
Baptist Ladies Cookbook.
It's the most charming little cookbook because it's a reprint. It's from the 1800s, and they kept all the fonts and the little notes and in the way they wrote recipes back then, and it's just pages full of these recipes, and it's really cute. I haven't even cooked from it yet, but I like to open up and just look at it. It's so cute. It's like each recipe will say from in like somebody's little name, and it's a great book. It's cute.
I like it.
Before we run from that, we have another question. We have K Max McDonald super chatting with $10. Thank you very much for the kind super chat. Investment in white well-being. Says and writing for Blonde, do you have any dietary advice for men and women to increase fertility? Many white couples complain we try to get pregnant and just can't. How much is this dietary? What can help with this? I believe you also mentioned that a big part of that getting pregnant is the cholesterol from earlier in our conversation, as that increases libido. So aside from increasing libido, what else can such couples do?
Yeah, most people have the libido thing down, but the actual conception, first you need to listen to this talk we're doing in entirety, and you need to probably go through all of my videos. You can find them on Red Ice or they're all the same, or on my channel if you don't want to share, between people. But you pretty much everything we've been talking about, switching over. If you're eating a very standard American diet, you're going to do one thing at a time. You're not going to go, just blowing your brains out, going crazy and blackpilling yourself. First of all, just take a deep breath. It's okay. Choose one thing to switch out in your household, maybe every month or something like that. Like, let's say you're drinking regular dairy, switch it over to buying organic dairy from the store. There's good, better, best. Best would be the raw milk, that we can talk about how to find that. Better, good, better, best. And so good would be just your average organic milk, whole milk from the store. And then the midline would be the more expensive. There's like Organic Valley or Horizon Dairy makes something called grass milk, which means that the cows are fed grass. The organic, not necessarily fed grass. So you're going to find which level you can do, and you're going to just switch over slowly, one thing at a time. This answer to this question could take a long time. So if you have any further questions, you can always email me. You're going to add in one thing at a time, and you're going to take away one thing at a time. Let's say you and your wife are using we're going to talk about endocrine disruptors. You're using deodorant that you're buying at the dollar store. You're going to take that away, and we'll talk about why. Hopefully we'll have time for that, and find a replacement that works for you. And we'll talk about how to read labels and stuff like that. So it can happen, just one thing at a time.
Yeah, I know. When you walk into someone's bathroom sometimes and you smell kind of the soaps and the shampoos they use, now I'm very sensitive to it. If they're all commercial products, chemicals, I notice it very much. I'm like I've eliminated all of that. All the soaps, deodorants, everything, even my dish soap is all natural. None of that chemical stuff in it. There's tons to talk about. And we will have to have you back on maybe maybe we'll do like after hours shows with like specific clips, and I don't know. we have a lot to ask you and a lot to learn about all this. But of course, we recommend people go watch Blonde Buttermaker's YouTube channel and her Red Ice output, because a lot of this information is out there already. So we're just kind of teasing it out in a different way. But we want to get to the endocrine disruptors and some things like that. But since we're already approaching, we're 5 minutes away from the final half hour, I want to make sure we get in some other things that I know we're interested in, because we wanted to talk about mind, body, spirit. So why don't we get a little bit into epigenetics? We're talking about gut. We're talking about gut health. What about gut in another way? What about your gut instincts? What about your being healthy and clear? Then your instincts are right, your intuition is right, and you're more aligned with what is good for you mentally and spiritually. And I know that you're also even interested in the topic of epigenetics, and we are as well, where we're exploring how our genes can kind of be flipped on or off by choices that we make. And we want to do things so that our optimal expression, our best self, is being presented into the world, and we're experiencing our best self. This relates to ancestry as well. So anything that you have that you'd like to share on that topic?
Yes, absolutely. A very good example would be, going back to our little Swiss population, is Dr. Price was able to compare the non-modernized isolated populations with the populations surrounding. And, it's not just that they're good. We all have within us these perfect good genes. We all have the potential for the beautiful broad faces, for our babies to be developing within us perfectly, and to be able to play out in the icy cold glacial streams, and to be able to birth babies easily, and for their warriors to be able to fight with honor and dignity. It's all right there within us, but we just need to remember that and to feed that, and it might not be for us. Maybe some of us were fed formula. Most of us, our parents had the boomers. They were fed the thick of it. The food guide pyramid and the low fat, all of that. Starting, our mothers might not have. They weren't eating these sacred foods. So, but that's why it's so important for us to have children knowing this, because we can create another generation that can slowly, and hopefully we'll teach them too, to slowly get back to what our genes, what's holding within us, and for our genes to be expressed fully. And so Dr. Price found some examples where one sibling went to live with an aunt, or I forget the exact example, in a modernized, I think there was even twins. One stayed and one left, very young age. And he was able to compare the development of these two children. And you can easily, I'm not just, embellishing the story. You can easily find this information online, or you can purchase his book. And so the child that stayed and ate the ancestral diet of these sacred foods, they had a broad, beautiful face. They didn't brush their teeth. They had no modern dentistry, but they had straight teeth, wide palates. When we're eating healthy and nourishing our bodies, men and women, our babies will have clear passageways. They'll be able to breathe. They won't have ear infections. They won't have chronic coughs and these, problems with our sinuses and our adenoids and things like that. And it goes back to also the tuberculosis. Dr. Price had a theory that tuberculosis wasn't deadly because of a disease or a pathogen. It was deadly because when we're eating nutrient devoid diets with the pastries and the rancid, during this time it was cottonseed oil, because they had all of these extra things that they needed to, in agricultural commodities they needed to make use of. So they replaced lard and butter with cottonseed oil, and later on corn, and now soy oil and canola oil. Those things. Now, I tend to go on rants, but those things are not building.
You're in a good place for that.
Those things are not building our optimal gene expression. They're harming our genes, and so yeah. I get too excited and then I go off topic. And so what I was saying was he was able to compare.
This is what fries the computers.
Yes, he was able to compare the sibling that went into the modern and grew up eating those foods that I was just ranting about, and they had a more narrow face. The sibling, I think they were brothers. He had his teeth. He was missing some teeth even as a child, and then they were also able to see generations where the parents were eating the ancestral diet. It was never heard of where there'd be complications or death during birth. It was unheard of for cancer and heart disease. And all of a sudden, the subsequent generations are having more difficulty. So epigenetics is something I know very little about, but it's something that's really important to me to educate myself on. I never want to stop learning. I always want to be learning more and discovering more.
Here. That's what we're here for as well. And again, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Excuse me. I've seen the Weston Price studies and other things about the separated siblings. I'm familiar. So please do, if you're interested in what Alora's saying, go look that up, because the information is out there. What about the other aspects of our potential? Mindfulness, spirituality, raising you're a mother of 3. Any ideas on, as they grow up, the kinds of things you're going to do to imbue them with this sense of their heritage of being people of European descent?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about these things with our children. We're definitely going to get our daughters in the kitchen from a toddler age, and it's easier said than done. You know, getting dinner on the table will take longer for you when you have your 3-year-old like cracking eggs, and that's not actually going into the meatloaf, it's on the floor. But we need our daughters to remember, well, to learn how to cook. You know, a lot of women, I have a group of friends, and I was telling them, because I always am talking about these things and my friends are rolling their eyes, but they're all saying, oh, bone broth, it's gross, it's so expensive if you buy it. And I'm like, just buy a chicken and roast this organic pasture-raised chicken, roast it in the oven and eat the chicken and use the bones to make your bone broth, save the skin. And they're all like, well, how do you roast a chicken? And I kind of, you know, I have to remember that we have to go with baby steps. It's, you know, we weren't really taught how to cook. Not everyone. Of course, there's plenty of women that, oh, I was always in the kitchen with my mom. But we need our girls to be in the kitchen, and we need our boys to be outside with their dad. They can play with sticks and rocks, and they can watch daddy use a knife. And there's a freedom to that. And instead of playing video games and sitting inside, and, you know, if your child can use your iPad, they can most definitely do other things around the house and appreciate, you know, what our ancestors did to bring us here in this place and time, and also teaching ourselves again and our children mindfulness. It's, you know, kind of like, you know, the law of attraction. What we put out is what we get. And if we're always, you know, listening to the black pilling things, and we're always going down that spiral, we're not going to be motivated to get up and make these changes. And we're not going to be motivated to become lifelong learners. And the path to greatness starts within yourself. So I think that we need to get right with ourselves and then pass that on to our children. And I'm a millennial, you know, we're not going to be perfect. We're relearning all the mistakes. I'm generalizing here, but all the mistakes our boomer parents kind of brought upon us not intentionally, but hopefully, what motivates me is that I can pass this on, and my children will be greater than me, and hopefully their children will be even greater than them, and we can get back to a place of greatness, like this, our little, Swiss village example, in modern times.
I was seeing if Jason was unmuting. That's why I paused.
Well, I will
Yeah.
jump right in here, and because we have a super chat from the man who must have absolutely unending stamina, up all night and day, serving white well-being. What a hero. Syrup, double duty tonight, modding the chat. Thank you so much for your kind work, brother. And super chatting with £5 with a question: does Buttermaker endorse Patrick Slattery's handy co-certified app with handy lists of items which are kosher and not kosher? Useful for all, he writes.
I've heard of that app, and I haven't checked it out yet, but
Well, do you have are you on Apple? Because I think it's banned from Apple.
I'm sure it is. It's definitely something we've had discussions about in our household, for sure.
Yes. Do you have any practices that you do for mindfulness or any sense of ritual?
Yeah, it's hard to revive a spirituality or religion that was stamped out of us. It's hard to, bring back to life something that we perceived was dead, but and it wasn't really, if we talk about our ancestors being pagans, it wasn't really a religion for them. It was their necessary way of life. They were much more in tune with nature than we are today, and they gained so much wisdom that was lost from that. Just easily from our example of the butter, they knew that there was something in butter that was extremely important, and so yeah, I try to, as much as I can with children, I try to make sure that I'm reading about our ancestors' spirituality. I try to make sure that we're out in the gardens, that we're thinking about more than just what we can see. We're thinking about other spiritual entities that might be out there, and we're calling back, and we have to kind of relearn and muddle our way through it, but calling back and relearning the daily spiritual things that our ancestors knew, and definitely setting intentions at different times of the year can really help put them into motion. If you have a hard thing that you're working on and you just can't get it right, you can remember what our ancestors did at different times of the seasons. They made sure that they were working on different corresponding things and using the momentum that is there for us, that the things that we can't see, we can tap into that. And it just starts with just little daily remembering, and it's a long journey to shed the old and bring in the new.
Indeed, especially it's a difficult journey to shed the old and bring in the new, because we are just inundated with all of this, and this ultimately for the benefit of us as a people, because you are not going to be able, folks, to have safety, to have security, to be healthy without achieving those things by way of having a healthy and secure people. We need to get well beyond this idea of individualism. It is natural in us. You don't have to worry about our individualistic tendencies going anywhere. It is just something that is intrinsic to our people that you don't see in the other races of man. What we need to focus on is the fact that we are a people, and that your health and safety and well-being, and that of your loved ones, your children, and those you're going to be leaving behind once you leave this world, is only going to be achievable by way of our people being healthy. And so we need to, when we're looking at all of these different things about how to make ourselves healthy, to make our families healthy, we need to be thinking about our broader community as well, about sharing that information with each other, like Elora does brilliantly. So many people have gravitated to you and are excited about everything that you're doing. There's just, the chat loves you. I knew that I always appreciated you. I know others that are close to me who dearly appreciate you and the work that you do.
I don't even realize that. I forget. Like, I just, you know, I am myself, and I make these videos and I send them off into the ether, and I guess I don't even realize that people are watching them, and I'm helping people. It's flattering. And I feel like, oh, little old me, you know, I'm a person just like you and you and you and you. And I came to this journey difficultly, but I just want to tell people, if I can do it, so can you. And not to put me on a pedestal, because we all can achieve great health. You know, it's there within us. You can do it. I like to say, I do believe that our souls, you know, I'm not as educated on, you know, philosophy and metaphysical type things, but I do believe that our ancestors and parts of our ancestors are reborn within us. And I always like to tell the story that I believe that part of my soul is the rebirth of my grandmother, who part of my name is named after. And when she passed away, the same week she passed away, my mother found out that she was pregnant with me. And sometimes, it's kind of crazy to say, but sometimes when I'm in the kitchen, she lived on a farm and she cooked and all those things. And sometimes when I'm in the kitchen, I feel like I am channeling her. And I think it's really important for us to remember that we are here as a long line of successful, strong, healthy people. And when we tap into that is when things open up for us.
Very well said. We have some super chats with some questions. NPC 162 super chatting with $9.99. Thank you most kindly. Blonde Buttermaker is a wonderful guest. What are her thoughts on spanking? My father never spanked me. He was so stern I never crossed him. My mother spanked, and I had a poorer relationship. So we've got a spanking question. And then also with Sabat, we have a $5 super chat. Thank you for super chatting again. And this is a question for everyone on the panel. What do you guys think of the theory of chemicals in the food and the possibility of social engineering? So I guess the question there is, could chemicals be used to social engineer us? We'll begin with the chemical question, and Elora, and then we'll move to the spanking question if you want to give your opinions on that. So the first to you, are the chemicals in the food that might be serving the interest of a social engineer somewhere?
Okay, I would definitely say yes, because a lot of the deleterious substances that we talk about in our food and our water and in the air that we breathe, the harmful effects do include depression and anxiety and mood disorders and infertility and problems with the development of fetuses. And I do think that it is by design, if I'm understanding the question correctly, because it does make a society that, let's say, I mean, we could go into endocrine disruptors if we had time, but that would be one example, is endocrine disruptors. And, you know, if we're creating a society has depression because of environmental things and not because of our genes, it creates a society that also is, you know, addicted to antidepressants, which kind of makes you complacent. It dumbs you down, and it makes a society that's complacent. And complacency has been a really strong word for me, because when you feel that complacency is creeping into your life, you start it's a poison, and it makes you just not better yourself. It makes you just want to sit on the couch, and you're not bettering yourself. You're not doing things to help others and to help yourself. And it makes, not only within ourselves, but a society, a complacent society, which has gotten us into this mess in the first place.
Yeah, why don't we just go ahead? We will set the spanking to the side for a moment and talk about these endocrine disruptors that you had mentioned, because we also have a question about, can you ask your wonderful guest if she has any thoughts on nutrition and autoimmune disease? I imagine that will play in to that topic as well.
Yeah, so I guess for some viewers or listeners that are wondering, well, what's an endocrine disruptor? We could kind of discuss that just briefly quick. An endocrine disruptor is a substance that alters the function of our endocrine system. And maybe if we need to step back a little bit more, well, biology was a long time ago. What is our endocrine system? And our endocrine system is the network of glands and organs that regulate our hormones and our metabolism and our mood and our sexual function. And some examples are adrenals, ovaries, the testes. So our endocrine system stores, secretes, and produces hormones. And so what happens with endocrine disruptors is they mimic our hormones, and we have cell receptors for our hormones throughout our endocrine system, and they mimic the hormones, and they can either block the cell receptors from receiving the real hormones. They can mimic it, and I kind of think about like a lock and a key. The endocrine disruptors go into the receptors, and they disrupt the whole function of the system. So we can talk about what's so bad about endocrine disruptors, unless one of you two wanted to elaborate more about what endocrine disruptors are.
No, you're our guest, and we have a few things to get to before you go. So why don't we continue on this? I just know that autoimmune, I hear more and more about autoimmune disorders. It just seems to be something on the rise.
Yeah, so autoimmune disorders, they definitely have to do, when your body is attacking itself, it's confused. And, a lot of us know many people who have autoimmune disorders, and maybe some of us ourselves have autoimmune disorders, and endocrine disruptors are definitely play into that. And when we have things like leaky gut, where our gut is not stable, that plays into it. It's kind of, again, like the death by 1,000 cuts. All these little things play into autoimmune disorders. So that's one effect of endocrine disruptors. And we need to definitely just kick ourselves in the butt and get these things out of our lives. And that's where complacency comes in. Like, I have been complacent in my life, and, buying some plastics and stuff like that. And I need to, remember, and this talk has helped me. So we definitely, endocrine disruptors.
This is my water bottle. I don't use plastic bottles. There's a filter in here. It's stainless steel inside. Clearly filtered. They have no association with me or this show. They're in California, so they might well hate this show and what it's about. But I have to say, if you want to get healthy, and guys, the plastic's especially bad, have something like this with a filter. But please go on.
Okay, so I'll try to sum it up quickly. Where are we getting, exposed to these endocrine disruptors? Well, we breathe them in through the air, through synthetic fragrances like air fresheners. So, one simple step, if you're using air fresheners that you spray, air fresheners that you plug in, candles, candles, the scented any synthetic fragrance is an endocrine disruptor. We need to get those out of our lives. There's other options. If you like that clean, fresh scent in your laundry, there's plenty of other things we can do to achieve that. We're getting exposed to endocrine disruptors through our skin, parabens and phthalates in personal care products like lotions and shampoos and makeup, antibacterial gels, cleaning products, and plastics. And it's kind of blackpilling, flame retardants that are pretty much by regulations are required to be put on children's pajamas while they're sleeping, which is a scary one. So, we want to be buying organic cotton pajamas for our children, and the plastic toys, the pacifiers they suck on, inside of cans of the formula and those kinds of things. And I did have a really quick thing I wanted to read about endocrine disruptors that.
Please go ahead.
Because I do talk about these things, and if you haven't heard about it before, you might think, oh, our whole life, like, oh, that, everything is toxic then, right? And so I just wanted to say a quick little thing from safecosmetics.org. So, the question for the gentleman who was saying help for fertility, your wife can go to safecosmetics.org and learn about how to slowly switch over her cosmetics and shampoos to safer things. So it reads, in a 2010 study, 17 tested fragrances contained an average of 4 hormone-disrupting ingredients each, including synthetic musks and phthalates. Synthetic musks mimic and displace natural hormones, which can potentially disrupt important endocrine and biological processes. High levels of musk and ketone and musk xylene in women's blood may also be associated with gynecological abnormalities, such as ovarian failure and infertility. These findings provide human evidence for findings that suggest endocrine disruptors in other species. Another example of endocrine disruption, diethyl phthalate, has been linked to unusual reproductive development in baby toys and sperm damage in adult men. So these aren't just conspiracy theories like some people like to tell me. These are real things. And quickly, we can talk about endocrine disruptors in food too, if you guys have anything to add, or if you want me to continue.
That's important. That's really, because this harkens back to the beginning of the show when I was telling people, don't go on the search for the magic food or the magic herb or the magic this or water or what have you. It's more about staying away from the poison. That's the first step you've got to take. So these are the sorts of poisons, we were talking about the breakdown, the removal of the germ, all of this that undermines not only the nutritional value, but the steps they take that end up interrupting the normal processes in the body. So please do continue. It's very important. You are muted though. So unless you want to train us in the art of lip reading.
Okay, I'm back. I got too excited.
I had a friend who was deaf and he could do that beautifully. So it was amazing. But anyhow, please.
Okay. So endocrine disruptors, definitely one of the biggest places that we're exposed to them in the foods we eat and the water we drink. And so that goes back to our ancestral diets where we're eating fresh foods. We're not eating the packaged foods from the supermarket, in the aisles, all in between, the vegetables and the meats and the dairy, the chips and the crackers and mainly the candies in the kids' foods. And it's crazy. So we'll talk about that. Endocrine disruptors are in preservatives. They're in artificial colors and artificial flavors. So, if you want to slowly start somewhere, we're going to be looking at reading package labels. That's the biggest thing that we can do, is to educate ourselves about what to read. That was one of the hardest things. Even for me, I'll buy something and I didn't read the label, and there it is, BHT, a preservative that's an endocrine disruptor, and we have to spend our money wisely. So, we can't believe the lie that everything in the store is safe to eat. There are plenty of products on store shelves with ingredients that have been banned by the FDA. The FDA recently banned 7 chemicals used to make artificial flavors, and they're still on the shelves because they're allowing them 2 years to change over. So there's banned products, banned endocrine disrupting artificial flavors and chemicals that make them, that are allowed to be sold today. And we can talk about some examples like xenoestrogens and phytoestrogens. Those are endocrine disruptors specifically. And one big thing is soy. And I know there's a big debate. Does soy actually have, there's lots of information about how soy doesn't have phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are estrogen mimics from plants, and xenoestrogens are mimics from synthetic things, like the artificial flavors. So, in Japan, it's probably different now. They're in the same boat as us, not eating what their ancestors ate, but they ate natto, which is a perfectly acceptable form of soy because it's fermented, and of course it's non-GMO. Their ancestors ate natto, which is that is not what we're talking about when we say soy has a lot of estrogen. It's the modern day soy oil, soy flour, soy, all of the soy is just crap, and it's being fed to the animals too. So that, and processed sugar increases estrogen in the body and it decreases progesterone. And then industrial meats and dairy, they have these estrogens in them too because of what they're eating. And so that's why if we were to spend money and budget our money and figure out how we can afford the best healthy things, the most important thing, you want to buy organic. It's not a gimmick. When you read grass-fed, hopefully that you are finding things from a local farmer who is feeding these animals a healthy diet, so you're not getting yourself into that. And one really sad thing is red food dye is a xenoestrogen. And where are we always getting red food dye? Is on Valentine's Day, all of the red candies and the red, chocolates dyed red, the color red, right? Fertility. Red food dye is a xenoestrogen and it's decreasing fertility. So when you're giving your sweetie some sweeties on Valentine's Day, we don't want that to be with red food dye, so that it's a sad little, like a sick joke that's been played on us.
Yeah, that is despicable. Let me just read some super chats really quick. We have NPC126 super chatting with $1.99. How do you deal with the cult of veganism? Maybe we will touch upon that as we continue the discussion. Thank you very much for the super chat. Thomas super chatting with $5. Thank you so much. This is a good conversation. Thanks, he writes. Thank you very much for your investment in the cause of white well-being. NPC back again with super chatting $1.99. Should I stop using plastic cups? I think the answer is yes. You stay away from the plastic cups. Kelly super chatting with $5. Do you think they, and I will just insert the regime, the government, media, schools, churches, etc., do you think they are intentionally sterilizing white people, and that is why we are not reproducing enough? We will speak to that question, but let me say to that question, and also whether or not there is intention behind the question that was asked earlier, whether or not there is intentional disruption behind some of these choices when it comes to chemicals in the food, is that we are on this panel giving our opinions about these things. YouTube has become hypersensitive to people giving their opinions when they are not commensurate with the status quo, when they are not commensurate with what YouTube, our anti-white censorious friends, would like to say. So we are not saying that these things are absolutely the case when it comes to our opinions with our own observations, but indeed they are just our observations. So there certainly could be an intent by some in these different businesses to focus their energies more on us. I know that I have a lot of friends in the sphere of white well-being who believe that there are many diseases that whites are suffering from, more so than the non-white races, that up until the last few decades or so were almost non-existent in our people, and now are rapidly accumulating, rapidly mounting in the percentages of our people. And so they believe that, yes, there could be some nefarious activities going on. But I will pass that on, as well as the question about the cult of veganism. And I guess that is a question about some of I remember in one of your videos, I think perhaps it was a video, you mentioned something about some videos that were made about you by some of these vegan people who are objecting to your encouragement to eat meat. I'll just say this also when it comes to the veganism. I know we have a lot of people in the white positive sphere who are vegans or vegetarians, and they're very happy living their lives like this. I don't know how much they're actually cheating or not. But when I have seen these videos of people who have started down these paths of vegetarianism or veganism, and their health deteriorates the longer that they're on these paths, and they start off with this great energy and enthusiasm for this lifestyle, and then they end up having their bodies, their systems go wild, and then they end up having to go back to a diet that is a bit what we would refer to, I guess, is, for us, at least for our people, a bit more of a holistic diet, something that incorporates all of the different products that are available to us for our eating that was consumed by our ancestors. Their health returns. So I will turn both of those questions over to you, Alora, for your answers.
But wait, before Laura answers, Jason, just quickly tell the audience what time it is now that we're at the 2-hour mark.
We are just 60 seconds into overdrive. We are going into overdrive with our guest folks, all for you. She has kindly accepted to stay with us for another 15 minutes into this first overdrive.
My 5-month-old wakes every 2 hours at night, and then he gets up at 5:30. So I am here for you guys because I am very passionate about this. I'll be tired, but I'm here because it's really important information to get out there.
A big round of wildly applauding emojis, please, in the chat, folks, for that. And Laura, we pass this question over to you. The cult of the vegan.
Okay. Yeah.
And the sterilizing question.
Okay, the sterilizing question. Yes, I mean, it's not a conspiracy. I think the answer is yes, 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 yes. And to preserve this video on YouTube, I won't go into detail, but my answer is yes. And if you want to email me for more detail, you can do that. And like I said before, that's kind of what brought me down this path to be with you guys here today, is taking a step back and saying, what's going on here? Why is this happening to us? What's behind this? So yes. And the vegan thing is kind of a video or a talk for another time, because we could talk for another 2 hours going into the details about the book, like debunking the book, the China study, which I'm sure a lot of you might be familiar with, the big book that says red meat causes colon cancer and stuff like that. We can go definitely into detail about debunking that book, and it would take a little bit more preparation for me to go into that, but there's definitely a lot of examples about how those studies were anecdotal, and we can discuss that at another time. But I want to say, if you're coming off a standard American diet, you were eating cereal for breakfast, you had McDonald's for lunch, and then you had a frozen pizza for dinner, and you just go turn 180 and you're going into the vegan diet, where you're eating vegetables, and you're starting to care about what you put into your mouth. Yeah, you're going to lose weight. You're going to feel really good. Your skin's going to come. You might regain your fertility. You're detoxifying yourself from all those endocrine disruptors you were eating in the packaged foods and in your microwaved foods and stuff like that. You're going to feel good at first. And maybe for someone that's obese, maybe they should do a vegan diet for 6 months. But we cannot nourish after you're done detoxifying. You need to now go back and nourish your body with those sacred foods, with those fat soluble vitamins. You need to, maybe during that vegan time period, you need to be sourcing the grass-fed local meats from your area, and you need to be finding your raw dairy. There's ways to get around that. Maybe if we don't have time tonight, you can email me, or we can talk again about what supplements are good to be taking and how to source these sacred foods that our ancestors ate, that nourished us instead of only detoxify our bodies, where we can source those. Because where there's a will, there's a way. There's lots of excuses we can make. It's too expensive. I can't get that in my area. That's too much for me. But there's ways we can there's a solution to every problem. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I'm not sure if we have time to debunk vegan diets right now, but I would love to do that. I've dreamed of doing a video where I go into the health food store undercover with my camera, and I show you the labels of the vegan foods, and we talk about what those things are, and those things are not any healthier than meat. And when you're choosing, in a conventionally raised pepper over your conventionally raised meat, that's still not healthy for you, with the pesticides and other products that are GMOs. That's not going to help you. So it's about how it was raised, not exactly the exact food.
Right. Very well said. Before we move on to our next, and I guess what will probably be the final topic for the night, we did have the question about spanking, which I guess is somewhat tied. I mean, we're talking about feeding ourselves, feeding our children, and this is about family. And the person wanted to get your thoughts on spanking, and I'll give it to Jared as well. My only thought is that I'm for it if she likes it. So I'll pass it over to you, Jared, on your thoughts on spanking, and then we will go to Laura on her thoughts and the final subject of tonight.
I have nothing to add to that. I give the floor to Laura.
All right.
Okay, well, I'm not, here's the thing. Before you're a parent, you have these perfect ideals of how to raise a child, okay? And then you have a child and it all goes away. It's like, if you want to be humbled, it's all gone. You have to, I used to be, there's the camp of thought of peaceful parenting, and you never spank your child, you never raise your voice, and stuff like that. And yeah, that's all great until you have a 3-year-old on the floor screaming and crying. And if our children are eating healthy diets, if our children are not eating ring pops and the popsicles with the food dyes, the excitotoxins, which is another video that we could do, your children will be more well behaved, and you won't get all of the behavioral disorders that you see in children today. But it's not a surefire thing. We eat healthy, and there's plenty of mischief going on around here. Okay, so spanking. I guess my rule is, if your child is endangering themselves running out into the road when a car is coming, you may need to spank your child and really get it into their head. You know, I don't like to do spanking if, you know, my child is acting up around the house. I don't think it's healthy, and I think it's left for extreme circumstances, not, you know, but it's you have to just use your intuition and feel your way through it, and know your child. Every child's different. So I guess that's my answer on spanking.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't know that was about spanking children. We have a super chat from Sabat, again, $2, asking the question, are people getting GMO confused with G engineering? I don't understand that question. Do either of you?
I do know that people confuse genetically modified organisms with selective breeding. I've had a lot of people try to tell me, oh, our ancestors did GMOs, and, you know, they selected the traits they wanted in their plants and their harvest. And those are definitely two different things. Our ancestors did not modify and insert, you know, that whole topic
In a lab, yeah, and Monsanto seeds that
those are two different things: selective
fertile.
breeding and genetically modified.
And
Genetic engineering.
Yeah.
Genetic engineering, indeed. Thank you.
G engineering.
The next $2 super chat, clarifying his position, and I think we spoke to that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Made the point clear. Jared, looks like we are just under, looks like about 4.5, now just 4 minutes until we have to wrap up. So I think I will go ahead and ask our very lovely guest for her final thoughts and what she's working on and where she can be found. And make sure to take all the time you need on your final thoughts. Don't worry about how many minutes we have left.
Okay, my final thoughts. I guess I would really like to motivate people to think critically and to think for themselves. And just because you're questioning something and you're researching something doesn't mean that you have to, in the end, you know, believe in it. But remembering that we have a choice. When you go to the doctor, you have a choice to say yes or no. You have a choice to ask, you know, if you're getting prescribed a medication, you have the choice to say, can you please read me the package insert, and let's have a discussion about the side effects of this drug. And, you know, when it comes to your children and their health, you are the authority over your body. And I think when we become complacent, we forget that we don't have to do what they tell us to do. Like that's, you know, one big thing that has been reclaiming yourself and your voice in that way. And I think that a return to greatness starts by reclaiming your ability to think for yourself. And I think a return to greatness starts by making choices for yourself. I think a return to greatness, like we've been discussing here today, is educating and understanding yourself about the biology happening within you, and also remembering our spirituality. I used to be, when I was a vegetarian, I was also atheist, and the world was just so dull and boring, and it was horrible. It was a horrible life to live. I was recently talking to a millennial couple and asking them, are you recently married? I asked them, are you going to have children, or, you know, what's next? And they were like, oh, I mean, no, we aren't having children. It's a terrible world we live in. It's a dark place, and I can't bring children into that. And to that I say, no, it's actually a very beautiful, wonderful life that we live in, and we should be grateful for everything we have. We're not suffering, you know, we're not suffering. We have a lot of resources and choices to make for ourselves, and we can choose to suffer, or we can choose to do something about it. We can choose to be grateful and to name grateful things we're grateful for every day, and attract beauty, and you know, like listen to beautiful music and go outside in your bare feet and just let the sun shine on your face. There's a lot of beauty in this world, and all of us here, if you're listening, you were born to be here at this exact time. I used to think, back when I was a vegetarian, atheist, liberal, I used to think, you know, I wish I was a hippie, you know, in the 70s, and I was born for the wrong time. And now I know that I was born to be here now. And so are all of you. And a return to greatness starts with remembering yourself. So that's my tangent about that. And I really hope people, I can inspire people to think about those things. And you can find my videos on my YouTube channel that we have linked. You can find my videos on the Red Ice YouTube channel. You can find my videos on the Red Ice website, which I would encourage everyone to use their website, because YouTube is just going down the drain. And you can find me on Instagram, the Blonde Butter Maker. You can find me on Twitter at the BB Maker, and you can donate to me. I don't make money for what I do. This is all a passion of mine. I hope to someday make money for what I do. You can donate with the Cash.me app that we will have linked. It's the money symbol, the Blonde Butter Maker. So I think that's all the social medias that I'm on. I'm working on videos. I'm working with other people in our circle to make my videos better. And the folks at Red Ice have been very, very kind to me. They help me make my videos. They are some wonderful people. So I definitely, if you haven't heard of them, please check out redicetv.com, I believe, Red Ice TV. They're wonderful people too that have been very, very kind to me to allow me to do this passion that I have.
Well, you are an absolutely wonderful addition to our community serving white well-being. It has been fantastic, just absolutely magnificent having you here today with us. So Laura, why don't we give a little teaser for some of the topics? I know we didn't get to everything. When we have you back, are there any specific topics that you want to be sure to address when we have you back and get the people excited about that?
Yeah, we could definitely, I know we didn't get to go into much depth about spirituality and, I guess for me, pagan spirituality, using that word is not the best, but it's what we can say for now to reawaken our spirituality. We can definitely get more into detail about that. We can get more into detail about vegan diets. There's so many things we could do. You could contact these fine young gentlemen and request something that you want me to talk about here too. Those are just a few things off the top of my head. Endocrine disruptors, we could talk more about that.
Splendid. Jared.
Yes.
Where can folks find you?
Who am I?
What are you working on?
I wake up every morning and I look in the mirror and I ask myself that, who am I? No, I know full well who I am. That's why I'm here. Laura, what you said at the ending was pitch perfect, a pitch perfect ending for this show. It was from the heart, just spontaneous, and thank you for that. It was beautiful, and I agree totally with what you said. And yes, we are so excited and humbled to be part of a community of people in the chat and also content creators who are looking to turn over a new leaf and do something positive, not denying what's happening in the world, but also claiming, as you so beautifully said, our greatness and what that means, and having a positive vision going forward. Because as I sometimes say, if all of our enemies and all of the problems plaguing the European peoples went away tomorrow, what are we doing positively? What are we doing to teach the next generations about our heritage or food and diet, like you were saying? So this is all wonderful stuff, and I'm so happy that we are now in touch. I know we've communicated a little bit here and there, maybe responded to tweets here and there, but now there's a more solid connection. So thank you so much. I want to highlight a comment as my way to say goodbye. Someone in the regular chat, Caesar did nothing wrong, said the West has an autoimmune disorder. I thought that was a profound comment, and it's something that I'm very passionate about as well, where all of these levels intertwine. And maybe that's where we can develop more next time. Because Laura, you said things are synergistic earlier. I love that. I love taking a holistic approach. Sometimes when people think of spirituality, they think you're going to sit and meditate. Meditation is great. I meditate. I talk about meditation, but sit and meditate and will yourself to feel better or have these changes and not realize that we are physical beings, and living and engaging in the physical world and attuning your body is just as quote unquote spiritual as something more mental or ethereal like meditation. I can tell you, and I've had this lesson myself, if anything, when I was younger, maybe I went the other way and I was a little more, my nature was thinking about the more spiritual type stuff. But as Alora's been talking about tonight, if you want to feel your best, there's no denying that when you do a cleanse or when you eat the right food, all of a sudden things are clearer. You feel better. You're in this state of mind where seemingly nothing can harm you. Even if you got bad news, you're confident that you could deal with it. You could roll with the punches. So if you're going to sit on a rock and meditate and feel like you could just will yourself to do that and then not understand that you might just need to do something as mundane as change your diet or exercise or do some kind of a cleanse or a fast, all of these things are connected. And so, yes, it's a way of life. It's a way of being. And that is what we are trying to all understand and piece back together. So a perfect show. It's a perfect thing. Your timing is perfect with spring. Jason and I have really been into this turn of the spring and trying to get into the spirit of spring as we just hit it. And this was a great episode for it. So anyway, without saying too much more, you may know, I hope you do, that my site is thegreatorder.com. Everything from me goes through there. It's basically an archive of what I do, all the YouTube activity and other things like articles and t-shirts and poetry that I write and art that I find, ways to support, ways to be in touch. So please go there. Also, we have our YouTube channels. We're doing this all the time, all kinds of videos. Jason said in the beginning, we did a collaborative video together we released just a couple of days ago. So any of you who haven't seen it, please go watch. It's very short. It's under 2 minutes. It's a different kind of a video. It's called Spring Incantation, the Western Sunrise. And Jason and I recite something outdoors. It cuts between the two of us. And we wanted to speak something into existence. We wanted to use the power of the word to do an incantation, remind what, as the refrain goes, what our wisest ancestors wanted for us, what is best in us. So it's something we put forth into the world as a gift for this spring. It's on my channel right now, so please go do check that out. And I'll echo what Alora said as well. Redice.tv is their site. Henrik and Lana are doing great things. Please try to support them by becoming a member. You'll get more of Alora's material. I have to say, little self-serving, you'll get to see the part 2 of my interview I did with Henrik about a month ago at this point. Only part 1 is on YouTube, but that part 2, I'm telling you, it gets juicy. It's probably the most in-depth personal interview I've ever done. So I really do encourage you to become a Red Ice member so you can see the whole thing. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason to take us out. We love you, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you, my good friend. It is indeed time to tap out. We do have a late super chat, which is a question for Alora. It's from K-Max, super chatting $5. Thank you very much. For Blonde, will you do any videos with Lacey, Lynn, or Wife with a Purpose, females with similar views? Do you have any plans for that, or would you be willing to do so?
Yeah, I would definitely love. I've been wanting to speak with Ayla, Wife with a Purpose, for a long time. It would be really great if we could do that.
Well, perhaps we will have to help facilitate that process. So thank you all for being here today. I want to ask you all, if you have not already subbed to my colleague and guest, please do so. If you have the ability to financially support them and you have not, please do so. I also want to thank my esteemed moderators who were in the chat today. We had Syrup, I saw Kat, I saw Phoenix, and I also want to give a big salute to HB 2014 for all that he does in helping spread the word of white well-being, the clips that he makes. He's in the chat as well. Great to see you here, HB. I want to give some salutes to some folks I saw in the chat as well. I saw Jennifer. I saw Blackwater Park. Mike Police I saw in there as well. And Very Fake News. Great seeing you all in the chat. Thank you all for participating in the chat. Thank everyone who watches live or in replay. And of course, a big hearty thank you to everyone who super chatted during the show today. Thank you so much for being here. And a final note, I think this is the big takeaway. If you've been watching the whole show, the big note, the big takeaway for all the guys out there, remember to overfeed your women with cholesterol. And I look forward to seeing you all again next time.